There's a type of person most people never fully understand. They don't yell when they're hurting. They don't break things. They don't send the long emotional message at 2 in the morning. They just, slowly become less present. And if you're not paying close attention, you won't even catch the moment it starts. One day you simply realize the warmth is gone, and you can't point to exactly when it left. I want to talk about those people today, because I think a significant number of you watching this are exactly that kind of person. And I also think most of you have never been given the right language for what's actually happening inside you when you go quiet. Here's where most people get it wrong. When we think about how someone responds to being hurt, we picture two things. They either fall apart, or they fight back. They either crumble or they confront. Those are the two emotional responses our culture actually has a vocabulary for, but there's a third response. It's quieter than both. And it's far more psychologically complex than either of them. It's the response of someone who learned, very early, that silence was the only version of safety available to them. Let me walk you through what that actually looks like at the root level. When a child is raised in an environment where expressing pain leads to punishment, or to something almost worse, which is complete indifference, something important happens inside that child's nervous system. It begins to wire vulnerability and danger together. Not as a conscious decision. As a survival adaptation, research into emotion socialization has consistently shown that children whose emotional expressions are repeatedly dismissed or minimized don't simply learn to stop showing those emotions outwardly. They learn to distrust the emotions themselves. They begin to experience their own inner world as something excessive, inconvenient, or simply not worth the exposure of being voiced, and this is a crucial distinction. There's a difference between choosing silence as a strategy, and believing at a foundational level that your pain isn't worth speaking. One is a tool. The other is an identity. And when that belief gets built into someone's sense of self early enough, it travels with them into every relationship they ever form. So as an adult, when someone hurts them, a partner, a close friend, someone they trusted, they don't reach for words. They reach for distance, and to them, it doesn't feel like giving up. It feels like self-preservation. It feels like the only rational response to a situation where speaking might lead to being minimized again. From the outside, this looks like coldness. It looks like they don't care enough to engage. That interpretation couldn't be more wrong. What's actually true is the opposite. They go quiet precisely because they care too much. Because saying something out loud means allowing themselves to hope that someone will actually hear it. And hope is dangerous when your experience has taught you that hope tends to be the thing that gets used against you. Speaking means risking being dismissed. And that specific risk, being seen and then made smaller for it, is the one their entire nervous system has spent years learning to avoid, so the silence isn't apathy. It's an act of emotional self-defense by someone who cares deeply and has been burned for it before. What I want you to understand about their silence is that it isn't passive. It's doing an enormous amount of invisible work. Behind that calm exterior, sometimes behind a smile, there is an entire internal operation running. It's managing grief. It's containing disappointment. It's protecting their dignity. And it's running a continuous, quiet background assessment. Is this person actually safe? Is this relationship worth the exposure? If I say something, will they meet me there? Or will I just end up smaller than I was before I tried? All of that, behind a face that looks completely fine. People who carry pain this way often develop a kind of composure that reads to others as detachment. They seem okay. They function. They show up. And because they've spent so long appearing fine, very few people ever think to look deeper. The silence, then, isn't the wound. It's more like the layer that formed over the wound to keep it from being touched again. Think about someone like this. Call her Maya. Not a specific person, but a very recognizable pattern. She's in a serious relationship. One evening, her partner makes a careless comment about her in front of others. Something throwaway. He's already forgotten it by the time they leave. She laughed when he said it. She excused herself for a moment. Stood alone for a few seconds, then came back and spent the rest of the night being completely present and pleasant. On the way home, he asks if she's okay, she says yes, and she means it in the way that means she has already folded the hurt into a quiet internal drawer and pressed it shut, he doesn't follow up. There's nothing to follow up on, as far as he can tell. 3 weeks later, something has shifted. She's a little less available. Not dramatically. Just less there somehow. She can't quite name why. He has no idea there's anything to name, and from one small moment that never got spoken, a distance grows. That's the pattern. The wound is rarely the dramatic fight. It's the accumulation of small moments that were never given language. And eventually, the weight of what's unsaid begins to take up more space in the relationship than everything that was ever actually said. There's also something important happening physically, not just emotionally. Research in the psychology of emotional suppression has found that when someone restricts outward emotional expression, the internal physiological response doesn't decrease, it often intensifies. The body holds what the face is trained not to show. Cardiovascular arousal, nervous system activation, these don't disappear simply because the behavior does. The hurt is still fully present. It's just migrated inward, somewhere the other person can no longer see or respond to, and that has real consequences. Not only for physical health over time, but for closeness. Because genuine intimacy requires a kind of openness that these people have had to strategically shut down just to get through their days. You can stand right next to them and still not be close to them. Because proximity isn't the same as access, and they've learned to make sure those two things stay separate. But here's what I think matters most, and what I don't want to leave out. This isn't permanent. People shift. These people shift, especially under one specific condition, when they encounter someone who is genuinely patient. Someone who doesn't punish the quiet or read it as rejection. Someone who doesn't push or fill the silence with noise or demand an explanation. Someone who just stays, remains present, and asks gently, without making the asking into something heavy. That's the thing that moves the dial, because here's what people who go quiet are actually doing when they withdraw. They're watching to see if you notice. They're watching to see if you come back without being asked. They're running a quiet test, not consciously designed. Not deliberate, just instinctive, to see whether you can feel the shift in them without them having to perform the pain for you to take it seriously, and if you reach back, without being prompted, without needing them to explain or justify or prove it. That can land more powerfully than almost any conversation could, because what they need to know, what years of dismissed vulnerability has made them doubt, is whether they are actually seen. Whether someone can perceive them fully, without them having to make their pain loud enough to be undeniable. If you do reach back, they file that information away too. Carefully. The same way they filed the other kind, and if you don't notice, they revise quietly. No confrontation. No announcement. Just a small, private reclassification of what this relationship actually is and how much of themselves belongs in it. That's the part that makes this pattern so quietly consequential. By the time anything is visible from the outside, the decision has usually already been made on the inside. The answer to all of this isn't grand gestures. Grand gestures actually don't help much here. The nervous system that has been trained to expect danger doesn't respond to intensity. It responds to consistency. What teaches that nervous system that safety is real and not a trap is sustained, patient presence. Showing up the same way, over and over, without needing anything back from it immediately, that's what slowly rewrites the internal operating logic from vulnerability leads to harm to this time. It might actually be okay. If you recognize yourself in any of this, if you're someone who withdraws when you're hurt, who carries things alone because explaining them feels more exhausting than just managing them quietly, who has told yourself it's fine when it wasn't, more times than you can count. I want you to hear this. Your silence made sense. It was built for conditions that were real. It protected you when protection was genuinely necessary, but survival strategies are designed for the environment that created them. And at some point, what kept you safe in one chapter starts to quietly cost you in the next one. It's worth asking, every now and then, whether the wall is still serving you, or whether it's now keeping out exactly what you're hoping to eventually let in. And if you love someone who goes quiet, if you've ever watched someone you care about retreat inward and not known what to do, don't push. Don't flood the space with reassurance that mostly serves your own discomfort. Don't interpret the silence as not caring, just become someone who is genuinely safe to return to. Be the kind of presence that makes coming back feel like a reasonable risk, because for someone who has spent a long time deciding whether their pain is worth the exposure of being witnessed, that decision is never a small one. And you being the person who makes it feel safe. That's not a small thing either. Outro, affiliate/product mention per your existing format. Before I go, there's a link in the description and pinned comment to something I think a lot of you will genuinely find useful. It's a 20-file bundle of 7-day guides and daily planners built specifically around the things this community tends to be quietly working through. Self-awareness, mindset, focus, stress, sleep, habits, each one gives you a specific daily action, not just information to sit with. Check it out if it sounds like something you need. And if this video gave you something, subscribe and hit the bell. I put a lot into what I make here, and I'd love for you to be around for what's next.